Hello, Internet. Welcome back. My name is Blake. I guide those on a spiritual journey to help answer life's questions they didn't even know they had. This is my weekly live Awaken with Blaken, where I talk about various topics that come up within my empowerment and transformation coaching business. And I bring them to you here. I don't plan this, I don't script this. I can even tell I was using the wrong camera this whole time. I try to do my best I can, but sometimes I still mess it up. I'm still trying to dial this in. There's always a little thing that comes up, but I'm still learning it. I'm playing with OBS Studio. I am working with different cameras to direct. I even changed my microphone before this call because I'd been using a tiny boom microphone, and that microphone was picking up everything around. I live in a busy part of town, and there's a lot of traffic outside. This little mic, I didn't like it at first, but I had played with it a little bit more recently, and it has been working out a lot better. This is one of the first times I did it. I kind of made this decision at the last minute. My audio levels look a little high, maybe, I don't know. If anybody hears it and thinks I'm yelling at them, let me know. I can always turn it down some more. Anyway. This is my weekly live Awaken with Blaken, and I usually bring up topics at the last minute that come up through my coaching that have been influencing me and thinking through my mind throughout the week. And I usually do not plan this. As it's been doing more and more of these, I have had less and less stuff put together when this happens. I've had less of a real plan of how this is all working. And because I'm doing this live, because I'm using a software called OBS, which is for streaming, I have a camera on my phone that I use. Let me rephrase. I have a camera on my laptop that I use, and I have a camera on my phone that I use, which is the one that I was supposed to open with. It's the better camera. It's the one that I have the artificial lighting pointing to. These are the things that I am trying to get more familiar with, because this is a model for what I feel will be more of what I want to do when it comes to social media, is live talks, interviews, interfacing with the audience, doing a variety of things that I feel are going to be more candid, more raw, more live, and just more intimate in general. And this is kind of my testimonial of trying that. I'm also trying to maintain a regimen of doing this weekly. Every week that I have to do this, it sometimes builds up a little bit of resistance in me. I get a little nervous about getting on here because each time I do this, I feel less and less prepared, which is the point. The topics I come up with, sometimes I don't really know what they are, and I've changed them a few times as I get closer. And also, as I've done this more and more, there's less people that come on at the live and less people that watch it. And that's a process of getting used to doing things on the internet. I may need to switch platforms to something that's a little bit more suitable for this kind of content or this kind of format. I'll be experimenting with that over the time. But ultimately, this is the way that Awaken with Blaken works. I will accept questions as people have them. If they have them, you're allowed to post them in the chat and get to me. If you are somebody who enjoys these topics or wants to go into more depth, or you're curious and you would like to actually work with me, I am a coach and I am available. I have a 30-minute discovery call that is available with the schedule that you can fill out the form and get in touch with me, and we can have a free consultation call for 30 minutes to kind of dig deeper into what it is that that you're inspired to create, that you're inspired to change in your life, that you are currently trying to navigate through, so that we can find and identify a way to transform your life forever, a way to empower you and bring you in to that future self that you know that you want to be with, but that you just quite haven't been able to find the way to get there. So I invite you there. One of the things that I'm also working with is empowering new business owners within online businesses to solve tech problems that they have that relate to the tech and marketing. This is a project that I've been doing on the side. The only reason I bring it up right here is because it's really been taking up a lot of my time over the past few weeks, and part of the reason why I haven't been uploading content. I hope to come back here soon, as I do miss putting out content on my channel and talking about a lot of these. But for the most part, a lot of the topics kind of come up in this weekly call, and I just haven't. It's definitely a good proving ground for an idea that I want to work into more of a prepared video on YouTube. So a lot of topics I feel that even once I start getting my content on YouTube going again, I'm probably going to still use this platform on the live of talking about something and just kind of playing with an idea to see kind of how it works and getting feedback on it. I do appreciate the feedback I've been getting from people. I do get messages on Facebook from friends, from family, from even people I don't know, people that find my stream and that resonate with this work I'm doing, and will send me messages encouraging me and really promoting me. I really do absolutely am very thankful for that interaction. And it means a lot to me to know that this kind of stuff is really, it really connects with people. I really want to do something that makes an impact. And I'm very thankful that I get to do that, whether it's in this or whether it's within my empowered tech marketing work, which I do have a school group for. I do have a link in the description before and below. If that is something that you would like help with, most regards to entry-level tech issues that people really struggle with. Furthermore, this week I've had a few breakthroughs. I mentioned OBS, which is a streaming software. That's what I'm using to set up different camera shots and also different microphones, and will be probably a tool that I'd like to use moving forward with setting up interviews and things like that. One of the things that I had really struggled with my software is that I'm in my school group, when I do my Google Meets and I'm doing like kind of like a webinar style group consulting, I like to have a loading screen like I do for this call, but I like to have a different branding. It's a different audio. I take a different direction completely. And I was really limited to the way that I could even transfer the audio through. And I ended up struggling for half a day trying to figure out how to get that audio to work. And one of the things I had to do was install some virtual wire software to connect the output to this input to allow the music that I capture in files in OBS to actually output to a meeting, like it's actually being broadcasted. And one of the things that was really causing an issue is that and it took me forever to find this out, but I actually had on Google Meets what was it? It was it was a setting to remove the background noise. And it removed the background noise because it was only waiting for, or it was detecting if you were talking. And if you weren't talking, it would mute the background. And it did a really good job. But the music was being removed from the background because it wasn't someone talking. It was just some jazzy music that might as well have been, played from like a neighbor's house or something. So it was actually working well, and I was looking in the wrong place the whole time. I was trying to figure out what's wrong with my configuration, what's wrong with this, and turns out it was a setting in Google Meets the whole time. It had nothing to do, in fact, I had everything set up correctly. Even in Google Meets, I had turned on that setting myself, but I'd forgotten about it. And I feel like this is a really good metaphor for the overall message of the week, which is a lot of times we go through life and we set everything up a certain way. We structure everything in our lives a certain way. And at some point, we don't have the results that we expected. We don't actually get the outcome that we wanted. And sometimes it's because we're doing something wrong. Sometimes it's because we need to change something. We need to fix something. But in reality, sometimes the reason why things aren't working and the reason why we're not getting the results we want, it's because everything's working exactly the way we have it set up. It's our perspective of the results that's wrong. That realization may not actually help solve the problem, because we still need to go find out, well, if our expectations, I want this thing to still function to my expectations, right? But I was spending so much time with my own assumptions of why they weren't being met. Once I fixed this issue, I was like, oh, I get it now. I understand exactly what was going on. And it was really hard to find the overall thing to transition out of, because my mind was focused on the wrong thing. We really need to take a step back sometimes, because in life there's so many intricacies, there's so many complexities, that it's so easy for us to ignore. And one of the things that also was interesting about this problem is I kept looking on the internet for a solution. I thought it was a problem with OBS Studio. And so I went to the OBS Studio support. I started looking for answers to the question. I started listening I listed outlined my problem. I saw other people who had similar issues. They had listed out everything. I was following along, and I was recognizing that I'm doing the exact same thing that some of these people are doing, but they don't have this problem. And part of me wanted to just be like, what is wrong with this software? What is wrong with OBS? Why is it not functioning? Why is it not working? Why can't somebody just tell me what's wrong? And it wasn't anybody else's problem. It was my problem. And I do pretty good with a lot of these things being forward about, is this my problem or not? And this was one of those scenarios where I was so convinced that I had ruled everything out, that it wasn't my problem. It was some advanced technical issue that had to do with something that I was missing. OBS is, I've gotten, because of this project, I've actually become much more familiar with it. I've been able to kind of set up things. I kind of get kind of how it's laid out now, but it's not clear. And I'd say it has a little bit of a learning curve, right? It had nothing to do with it. It had nothing to do with that piece of software. It was simply something I had turned on in Google Meets. I had turned a setting on in there to work with meetings that I did for noise reduction, and forgotten about it. There's barely even 4 settings in Google Meets that you could ever use. And the one that I had done was causing a cascading issue. Fast forward to now, the whole noise cancellation feature, you can do in OBS. You can actually do that with your microphones and your speakers and everything. And you can set those things up and do it all there. I don't need to use Google Meets to do that. So I know this is kind of a technical example, but I definitely feel like it has a lot of parallel into the struggles that a lot of us go through on a daily basis when we're trying to understand why the world has all these problems. At least our world. Now there's bigger problems out there in the world that we're not really responsible for, but when it comes to our mood and our attitude and our ability to find solutions to problems, we are very much influenced by the attitude that we have and the way that we approach those things. Because it's so easy to kind of throw your hands up and be like, well, somebody else is responsible for this, and it's not working because they haven't helped me yet, and they haven't done it yet. It's somebody else's job to figure all this out because it doesn't work. But it's not. It's our responsibility to figure out where we've what we've missed and be thorough. It's easier said than done, but stepping away from things, taking a breath, maybe even writing things out, drawing things up, does a tremendous amount of value to many situations. I wish I could say that I'll never be in one of these situations again, but in my career, I know that this has happened a lot. And I know that as I'm moving into coaching and I'm moving into consulting and I'm moving into these other more spiritual modalities, maybe not with the consulting, but when I'm moving more into working with people in a more kind of humanistic way, not like trying to solve a problem with a computer, but um, trying to ask people questions and really kind of get their take on what they think their issues are. As I'm doing that more and more, I'm realizing that there's a lot of value in realizing that we don't always have all the components we need to solve a problem. And that the real way we get there is through patience, perseverance, and taking our time to ensure that we're not sabotaging our own efforts, that we're not limiting our perspective and what it is that the problem is. There's another thing that has come up in one of my calls this week that was real interesting. It was about business, and it was about our motivation when it comes to doing something complicated or hard. And what's real interesting about business is that there's a lot of things that just kind of make sense that are pretty standard. They're pretty common in a lot of different industries. They're common for a lot of different people. It's the same kind of problems and struggles that we all have to do, but there's still a trial and error process. There's still a learning process in terms of what choices we make and when to pull the trigger in certain things. And as I'm talking about these things with somebody, the topic comes up about how can you do something like, for instance, play a video game that's really intricate and has a lot of complexities to it, and enjoy something like that and be at a point when that game can consume you and feel like there's a never-ending possibility of things to do and keep your attention. And it's real interesting when you think of like doing hard things in a game, but ultimately a game is it's very narrow in the depth. There's very specific goals. There's very little consequences outside of this world that's been created for you. Shane Fuller, how do I know if I'm self-sabotaging? It's a really good question. Part of the tricky point about self-sabotaging is that a lot of times you really don't know until you're looking back on it. You know? I think this comes in kind of with where I'm going when it comes to consequences. Like, part of the reason why a game is entertaining and running a business may not be initially entertaining is really comes into hindsight. A business is going to reward you on the long scale. It's going to be a lot of components that all have to be tied in without much certainty of what's going to work and what's going to move forward. But when you're in the narrow confines of a game, it's very clear that you can try as many times as you need. It's not serious. The emotion that you may feel, even if you get angry or frustrated within the scope of a game, it doesn't necessarily scale outside to the other responsibilities that you have. Whereas you're pretty much, when you're in a business and you're taking care of tasks, you have a tunnel vision in terms of you really don't know how much effort you're going to have to put in something before you recognize that it's not even correct. And I feel like even when you talk about self-sabotaging yourself, this is something that can kind of be, you can, because self-sabotaging, I would say, even has like so many different variations within it, right? People may self-sabotage themselves in ways that they feel are helpful, you know, when you feel like you may be relaxing by partying, by socializing, by doing things because things have been so hard. Yet you are indulging or coping or trying to keep yourself away from something. When a game gets difficult, you can push it away. But when real work gets hard, you always find something to fill the time with that isn't that thing. I don't know how many times you have, but there's been so many times in my life where, for instance, I am not very good at washing the dishes. I will put the dishes off forever. But I know numerous times when I've had a very big project to work on or something due, and all of a sudden the dishes seem like the perfect thing for me to do. And the project seems more and more less important, less, not even, it's not even in my peripheral. It's like specifically being ignored. Especially when it's something productive, right? Especially when it's something like, well, I need to clean the dishes anyway. I guess I need to do that. And also, it depends on your deadline. If it's a clear deadline and it's a clear thing, like I got to get this project done and I got to present it and I don't get enough time and then I have to wing it, kind of like this show sometimes, that may be good enough to get by. But when it comes to something a little bit more, with a little bit more stakes, where maybe you're not getting your car fixed or you're not taking care of finances. And one of the ways you cope with not taking care of your finances is by spending more money. You go shopping for things you don't need to make yourself feel better about the money you don't have. There's so many nuances of ways that we may be engaging negative behavior to justify what it is that we really want to ignore in our lives. And unfortunately, the only solution is to kind of do the things that you really dislike the most. You know, like, am I doing a lot of things that I really, because it's delicate, right? Because I don't want to say don't do things that you love, because we want to do things that we love. It's just, are you, when there's something that comes up that's important that you know is uncomfortable, and you find at some point that you're leaning into it as many times as it comes up, I feel like those are good symbols that you're actually doing the difficult thing. I forget who said it, something about the phrase is, you know, doing the most difficult thing first thing in the morning. You get up and you eat the frog. It's the most difficult thing that you have to do, but you do it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the first thing in the morning, but if But when it comes to the never-ending tasks in a business, there's going to be so many uncomfortable things that we have to do. Are we doing those things? Are we finding ourselves in uncomfortable moments? Are we finding ourselves in uncomfortable conversations with people? Or are we finding ourselves are we finding ourselves avoiding those conversations, being by ourselves, being in environments that are safe, that eliminate those struggles and those hostile environments? Are we able to actually be honest with ourselves? Because it's super hard to be honest with yourself when you're already avoiding these things. A lot of the self-sabotaging behavior, I think, comes from a place of the shadow. It comes from a place of childhood trauma, comes from a place of unresolved, unresolved, um, unresolved things. I don't want to say just unresolved trauma because I feel like it's too small of a term, but issues that have been trapped within us, energy that's gotten stuck within us when we weren't able to actually open up our heart, when we weren't actually able to let things pass through, maybe at a certain time in our life, maybe even recently. There's things that we just haven't been able to heal. There's things that really have triggered us that we've been putting off from wanting to address our entire life. And as we're kind of making through this human experience, this temporary human experience, we're finding that we're catching up with things that we put off since we were younger. I just think that the first time you start noticing that you're self-sabotaging, it's probably well after those things have actually occurred, well after it's been too late to change it, but it's a good reflection back to you of what's necessary to address and where to actually heal. When it comes to business and school, education, or any of these really prolonged goals, these complex macro goals that we create for ourselves that are the sum of a bunch of smaller goals, it can be real easy, I think, to be overwhelmed by the sheer volume of it. Like if you go into a video game and you get a bunch of quests, you may say, well, I'm going to do all of these quests today. It's a game. It doesn't have the concept of how long you've been awake in the game. It doesn't have a concept of how you have moral opinions about the tasks that you're be giving and the way that you should be doing things. There's not a real economy. There's not real consequences. There's not real things. But I do feel that when you go to the real world and you have these real things, the desire is almost to play it like a game. It's like, I'm going to keep doing all these things as much as I can with little regard to my overall kind of well-being to get all this done. And that's not really an appropriate way of doing it. I know it's very obvious, but real life isn't a game. I do feel, though, that there is an opportunity to gamify our lives and recognize that once we are on after we show up consistently enough, there is a satisfaction that comes from accomplishing those things that's very a gamified type satisfaction. And when you get to that point, it really can help lead you to the other things in your life that may need more attention, that may need to be prioritized, that may be holding you back. There's triggers that are going to come up. Let those triggers be your guide. I hope this has resonated with a few of you. I definitely kind of went through this into a little bit more than I thought that I would necessarily get into, which I kind of like. I like having a lot of different perspective. I appreciate the questions, and I appreciate being able to kind of tie these things together, especially when it comes to business, especially when it comes to following something that's important to you, whether it be business education, your your um, your future, the moving closer to your future self, to your future life. All these things are very important in terms of keeping an awareness around how we're moving forward and what we're moving forward to. So once again, thank you very much for watching this, especially if you made it this far. I appreciate it. I hope that you join me again next week. I do this Wednesday at roughly 6 p.m. East every week. If you would like to get in touch with me again for my coaching or consulting, there are links in the description below. I also have a newsletter that you can subscribe to. I will give you a list of the top 21 books over the past decade that have made the biggest impact in my life. And with that, I hope to see you again next week. Thank you so much for being here. Take care and have a great week.